Cults are all-consuming. They don't allow their members to invest in a life outside of the group.
We didn't have access to the outside world. Since a small girl, I learned that anything that was outside of our community was of the devil, was really bad.
This world that I had been taught was dark.
Is eternal pain and suffering.
We isolate ourselves from the world because we're afraid of it.
My life was get up at 7, stroke some women's genitals, clean the house because it's like a spiritual cleansing.
I would just sit there by myself and go over the homeschool materials all day. I wasn't allowed to go to school. I wasn't allowed to have friends, to play with children that weren't a member of our church. We did a lot of tithing. Like 30% of your income was supposed to go to the church.
The way it's set up, you can't save money. They actually make it so that like everyone stays broke, which is just like a way that they keep you trapped. You spend all your money there, so you can't leave because they're the only place that'll let you live in a cool apartment in New York for cheap.
And so I never talked to anybody unless I went to church on Sunday, which of course kind of makes you more into the beliefs because it's like your entire social world becomes tied to other people who believe this.
Growing up and listening to all of these things, because that's all I knew.
That's why so many people would rather stay in a religion or cult, even if their beliefs are contradictory, just because their peers and family members are in the same religion.
Of course, it's difficult to leave.
Yeah.
When you leave,
And if you go in the outside world, then
you're shunned.
at the best you're in danger.
And I wasn't ready to lose my family and my friends.
If you leave the traditions that you've been taught, if you happen to die, you are automatically headed to hell.
What if I leave and I was wrong when I left? One of the things that made it for me personally so incredibly challenging is not wanting to actually be damned to hell.
They were taught at a young age that it's such a sin to even question it.
Questioning the paradigm I'd been raised to believe.
I always had a very questioning mind, and I always got a lot of spankings for that. So much spankings that my whole legs was bruised.
And I'll be like, just crying.
Every day was just getting hit, punishing, torturing. I didn't want to experience it every day again. I just would not see myself again and not feel any of these actions and feelings. So I decided I want to kill myself. I tried drinking bleach, so I put a bunch of sugar and I tried to drink it. I should just try to find myself out of the world. I couldn't see myself again in the morning again.
And I remember going to my mom and saying, "Is this love?" Because they would spank us and say, "This is God's love."
There was still so much in the assembly that we could enjoy, like anxiety, sorrow, depression. Untreated, okay, because psychiatry is for unbelievers. Cults view professional help from anybody outside of their group as a threat to their way of life.
So they're so damn afraid of even questioning their doctrines.
I had crippling anxiety. I've got to keep this away from everybody. I can't tell anybody. I've got no one to talk about it to. Nobody.
And it was hard.
Depression rate literally skyrocketed because most people would rather fool themselves and others just for the sake of acceptance, even if that acceptance by others is dependent on deception.
As a kid, I'd ask every year, can I play soccer? And I'd be like, no. Got to go witnessing. We never celebrated birthdays, school, Christmas activities. You grew up to feel like you were foreign in your own country.
The biggest idea I remember is that everything in life is determined by your dad. There's God, your dad, and then you. If you do anything that goes outside of your dad's instructions, then God will no longer protect you and you could be open to all sorts of danger. I felt like there were so many rules.
And those are to be followed.
If we continue to be obedient, then we ourselves can someday be a God.
That should get you to heaven.
Have the kingdom of God and be amazing.
We had like a notebook with all the rules listed. There was no TV in our house. We weren't allowed to watch movies or television shows. We weren't allowed to listen to any contemporary non-Christian music. was not allowed to cut my hair. I was not allowed to wear makeup. I was not allowed to wear high heels. Whenever you got sick or physically injured in any way, their first thought was, God let this happen to you because you disobeyed. When I would go into the grocery store, we weren't allowed to look at the magazines with like celebrities on them because that was like immoral and bad. I was not allowed to wear any clothing that had words on the front of it because my mom said it brought attraction to my body. My dad didn't like me wearing green because he didn't like the color green. So my mom told me not to put on green clothes. I was not allowed to eat non-kosher food because my dad wanted us to obey the laws of the Old Testament. They decided what we did and didn't eat. I was not allowed to read any books that were not approved by my parents. I never had a chance to have that first crush because every crushes were considered bad. I didn't get to experience messing up on your makeup, dyeing your hair a silly color.
Many people would rather hide their true gender identity just so their parents and friends won't be disappointed.
Certainly from an early age, I knew I was gay, but I just never expressed it. I was terrified of expressing it. The hostility in the congregations for gay people is quite extreme.
There is a huge issue still with women, kids who are LGBTQ getting kicked out of their home.
I got letters from people kicking me out of bands because they found out I was gay.
In fact, self-deception is one of the most common root causes of depression.
Long-term damage. I went to the psych ward 4 different times. If you're not a suit-wearing, dress-wearing person and you're there every Sunday, you get judged hardcore.
Can you imagine the serious impact of self-deception?
You would see the temple and you would associate that
with I'm not going to be worthy if I do end up ever going to the temple because I'm marrying a man, and that's not going to be something that I can do without feeling bad about myself. It's a life or death situation.
Yes, you're right. It can be life-threatening too. That's how dead serious it is.
The main reason how my father ended up dying in the cold was because left to heart doesn't let anybody go to any doctor without permission. He could have been alive if they would have let him go before to the doctor.
From friends who inherited the leadership was more extreme than her father.
We could tell you, because you didn't follow this, you're being taken away from your house, you have to come stay in shul for 1-2 weeks, depends on what you did.
Nachman Hillbrands insisted his sister, the 24-year-old mother of 4, eat bread that contained sesame, a food she was known to be allergic to. She was afraid to disobey the new leader. After an immediate allergic reaction, she died. Her brother blamed the death on her lack of faith in him as the new Rebbe.
An investigation in 2013 led to allegations of neglect and child abuse.
Any abuse possible was happening there. Any abuse. Sexual abuse is mostly with the rabbi. He was doing physical stuff with boys. Mostly, maybe with the girls too, but I for sure know with boys. Talking about the rabbi of Left to Heart was literally having kids sleeping with him in his bed. The main reason why I decided to leave and I said enough is enough was because they tried to force me to get married to a 12-year-old girl that was my first cousin. And I didn't want it, she didn't want it.
So as children, we learned the way that we can express our love is to serve men, which represent God, our bodies and our sexuality. And seeing pictures of women naked on a cross saying, sacrifice yourself for the love of God and for the people around you. So I learned about it and I understood that maybe one day I would have to do it. At 15, I experienced a rape in one of the houses that I was staying at. I felt, okay, now I have no hope.
There was emotional and psychological abuse, but there was also physical abuse.
They didn't punish, they gave tikkun. My tikkun was usually Malkus. I had to go get the belt and tell the principal that I wanted Malkus. I had to take off my clothes. They would tie me up with a gadol, lay me down in front of the whole school, and I got lashes on the back many times.
When I was a young girl, I saw my uncle abusing my cousins, and I told my dad what I had seen. He told me he would take care of it, and the assembly did. My grandparents had systematically covered it up, and my own parents and the leadership in the assembly had maintained a code of silence, trusting the Lord when nothing of substance had changed. Women were never to leave their husbands, and we did not believe divorce was biblical. So my aunt and cousins had no safe place to go in the assembly.
Doing it in the name of righteousness. The problem with that is righteousness can replace love. A Sunday morning, my mom was getting ready to deliver this baby a couple months prior. My dad came in, gave me my little brother who was born, and I just remember thinking that this was such a beautiful moment. And then I looked up and noticed that the energy shifted between my mom and my dad. And then I watched my dad hit my mom.
What was going on through your mind at that moment?
Confusion. Even as a young person, you're trained to try to compartmentalize it or don't throw it away. And that was just so confusing. And what made it even more confusing, after freezing, started just screaming and bawling. And my dad came over and gave me a hug and said, "Hey, you're okay," and went and took me to get ice cream and stuff like that. And life continues on. It's how it can become so toxic because it's not always bad. And that's what covers up the shit. It's just too easy that if they're a male and they hold the priesthood, forgive them. And all this bullshit statements that are ignoring the victim, let this go because it's just holding on to you. And all the while, silent suffering happens.
Don't say, don't tell anyone.
It's not fair.
Taking a break to reflect and introspect can take us back towards the right path.
What had happened was something wrong. Took me a long time to link the dots and say, no, this was rape. No, this was abuse. Before I couldn't even identify that was rape and that was abuse.
I realized what had happened was child abuse. I didn't get to make decisions as a teenager. Every decision was made for me. My parents' religious beliefs were not just religious beliefs, but were actually harmful cult ideas.
I could not be in a group that sacrificed women and children so that a few men could stay in charge. Staunch loyalty to any group is wrong if it means supporting an abusive, narcissistic, pathological liar. It was time for me to leave.
I needed a way out.
Because that abuse and that pathology, it doesn't stay up with the leader. It trickles down in the group. Good people end up doing really bad things. I started to see how small my worldview really was.
Did anyone ever tell you that you were brainwashed? No, in fact, you're always looking at the outside world and seeing why they're wrong. The first conversation I had with my dad that I wanted to go to college, like, if you want to continue to grow and learn and have knowledge, why would you go to college? You are at risk of losing your soul.
If you go to college?
Because you will be among the others.
So you could be, converted and brainwashed into the outside world?
Bingo.
If the outside world is a terrible place, if God is gonna judge me and kill me and I'm gonna go to hell, I really don't care.
Either I'm this gay human being and I want to live this life, but I'm going to hell, or I'm choosing who I am. Isn't that awful? And I'm going to go to hell. So the either or is you're going to go to hell. I say hell.
Leaving is incredibly difficult, but it is also completely life-changing.
There's so much more to life.
Can begin to construct a new life, and I'm not alone in this.
This world that I had been taught was dark was actually amazing.
I live without guilt, I live without sin, I live without judgment.
I cut my hair short, painted my nails Satan red, pierced my ears. More importantly, I admitted I want to have a career. I'm going to be one of those scary independent women.
I don't like what's happened to me. I don't like what they've done to me. I don't like carrying this great child, and I don't want none of it.
Yes, I had a lot of baggages of pain, but I also did have something special in me that could help me heal all that pain and also help me help others.
I have never seen my grandparents since the day I left the assembly, and my relationship with my parents is complicated. It takes a lot of work to unlearn behaviors after you leave something like that. And it was hard, but I can tell you that even the hardest day of freedom was better than the best day in a cult.
These are just a few out of zillions of examples I can give why living truthfully is so important. Because no one can ever be happy by living a fake life. And I'm not quite there yet myself. I have a lot of self-limiting beliefs and aspects of myself that need work. But I can guarantee you that I've been firing my ass off to continuously take actions to live a more truthful life day by day. Because I'd rather live by expressing who I really am and honor my core values rather than lying to myself and other people and continuing hurting myself for the rest of my life through many kinds of self-deception, such as hiding my gender identity, true passions, opinions, and beliefs.
A few years after I had left the assembly, I was walking down the street in LA when I saw her, a young girl in a conservative dress. She was standing on the street corner next to a man who was yelling the gospel at people as they walked by. I walked up to her and I knelt down in front of her and I looked her in the eye and I said, "One day you will grow up and you will realize you can leave all of this."
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.